Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of GAMERCAST. I'm your host, Jay, alongside my good buddy in Las Vegas, Rob. Say hi, buddy.
Hey, good to be back.
Hi, buddy. And of course, to my left, in sunny London, Ontario here, we have Glenn Stanway, the producer of this lovely show. What's up, buddy?
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Good to be here.
You know what? Let's just dive into it. We're talking NES. We're talking NES library. Okay, you guys ready? Right off the top.
Go for it.
When I say Nintendo Entertainment System, what games pop into your head? Go, Rob.
Mario 3.
That's it, one game?
It's the first thing that pops in my head, and it's got the biggest impact because I remember getting it for my birthday. And you and I have talked about this a lot, man. There is something about that box art, that bright sunshine yellow, and seeing Mario like that. And I remember a few times in our childhood, there were neighbor people on the later around the corner down our street, and you got like their Mario 3 box from them for I don't know, the worst baseball cards in the world or something like that. I don't know, but you made a trade.
Yeah.
You made a trade to get the Mario 3 box just because you wanted another one. It also obviously has a huge place in the Wizard movie. And it's just one of the best, titles for the entire library. So when you say NES games and memories that stand out, Mario 3, and then there's like a big pause about everything else that has to come after.
So I see behind you there, you're a big fan of the NES box art. If our fans out there didn't know, Rob loves the box art. He has a few framed ones. I can see Mega Man 2. I think he has the original Castlevania as well. Wouldn't it be cool if you walk into somebody's house and they have like a giant Mario 3 just to see like that yellow on the back of somebody's wall? Man, that's a good idea. I should do that.
Yeah, I mean, I also got a blanket that measures 80 inches by 60 inches. I did one for the NES Club, and I got to put it in a closet because I can't have you staring at me at night. But I did it. But I did another one with DuckTales 2, and it turned out so good. So if this site has that sale on again, I'm probably going to get like a Final Fantasy one and a Mario 3 one, because those are some iconic covers and stuff. But yeah, that bright yellow, man, you just can't escape it and help but look at it. And if you look at the NES library, there's a few other titles that use that. The other one that comes to mind right away with that yellow scheme is the reissue of Metroid. Bam, bright and yellow.
It's the yellow, yeah. Those NES yellow boxes are wicked.
I just heard the magic word, which is Metroid.
So let me guess.
Bing! Is that like the word of the cast or whatever?
The first NES game that comes.
I hear that name and I go nuts.
So, lead me to believe that Metroid is your pick then. As soon as I mention NES,
actually no. I have to say, if I hear the words Nintendo Entertainment System, what I would associate with it is probably the original Super Mario Brothers. That was the game changer. That was the packing game. That was the that was the thing that sold that system to so many households off of the get-go, and that's still probably my first memory that I associate with it.
Super Mario.
Glenn, yeah. I hate to say it, Glenn, but the game changer of the console launch was Duck Hunt. Mario gets a lot of the spotlight, but we all know it was Duck Hunt that won people over.
But do you know why?
Have you done research on?
Your stats mean nothing compared to the dog of Duck Hunt. Are you kidding me? It's the dog, man.
I'm just kidding. I'm just messing around. But Duck Hunt was a lot of fun. And of course, the whole Light Zapper tech goes way back in Nintendo history from the 70s when they had those, I think they were like electronic shooting galleries and stuff. So it's fun stuff.
I'm with both of you guys. I have a little bit of column A and column B. Mario 3 and the Wizard is one of the first things that rushes to my head. But before that, Glenn, it would be, Super Mario Brothers. My buddy Darren got it. He got his Nintendo in 1986, and we were in grade 6. Wow, this is really dating me. And I still had my 2600 back then. Didn't know much about this new Nintendo, but he got one for his birthday. Had a sleepover with 8 guys. And it was literally...
Sounds like a blast.
It was awesome, man. It was awesome. It was literally last man standing, passing the controller. One guy's passing out, the next guy's passing out. But Darren and I were up the whole night until his mom came down and yelled at us because we were still playing Super Mario Brothers. I loved it because it was one of the first games I can recall where you could attack it old school with the time attack and the score, or you could try and finish it. It had both, and I was just like, wow, it was awesome.
That's definitely one of the things I love about the original Super Mario Brothers. It had such an arcade feel to it, but it was such a bridge game to all the narrative titles that came after it, were really just platformers. And to this day, every platformer gets compared to the Mario franchise because it really did establish so many things back then.
I mean, the controls in Super Mario Brothers to this day have still not even. They haven't been challenged. No one.
That's as tight a game as you're ever going to find in terms of
playability and control. Shigeru Miyamoto is a friggin' absolute genius. I didn't need to say that, but I felt like I should. You know what I mean? Like, that game is so perfect. There's been so many platforming mascots that come and go, and nothing. Not even Sonic. In my opinion, Sonic doesn't even come close to Super Mario.
You brought up a point, Jay, that is actually really interesting to me. Or sorry, it might have been you, Rob. I'm trying to kind of keep up with both sides of the conversation here. But somebody mentioned it bridging the gap between the old school kind of arcade score mentality, and it was Rob. Rob's waving at me to let me know this, and narrative structure. And I think that's part of why the game was so compelling to me at that age, because I enjoy games just like every other kid. But I found that my ability to enjoy something like a Duck Hunt or a Pac-Man or one of those old kind of arcade, quarter gobbling classics was just that I never felt compelled to really get into the competitive aspect of it. So for me, getting the high scores was really not appealing. But Super Mario Brothers, it's keeping score, and you do have that side of the game, but there's more to it than that, right?
We were playing it, again, back to Darren's party, we were playing it the traditional way. You're going side to side trying to get to the end, and then we found like warp zones by accident. And then the game was who can find the warp zones.
Yeah, it's all the secrets that are packed in there too.
And it's like, wait a minute, there's more than one way to go through this?
Yeah, the first time you get a certain power up and you kind of enjoy the freedom that gives you, your first fire flower. I'm thinking even just, wow, at that point in time, they weren't doing game tutorials, right? Like, games did not teach you how to play them.
Nope.
If you wanted to have even a remote idea, you looked at the instruction manual, and I used to really annoy my friends by being the guy who, when we went and rented a game, I insisted on reading the manual before we could actually play it.
Oh, come on,
I
really?
was that guy. But what's cool about Super Mario Brothers is it really is a school in game design from start to finish, because you get that simple World 1-1 level that really kind of teaches you the base mechanics of the game, and that difficulty gradually ramps up. And you know that you're going to get a different world thematically that's going to kind of ramp with each passing sub-level. And
it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that, Glenn, because one of the guys that we have in the NES Club is James Portnow, a game developer who has credits on Farmville and Call of Duty. If you can ever imagine a resume with both of those titles on it. And we interviewed him at Con Bravo. Now, this footage doesn't appear in the film yet, but when we release the special edition and extended stuff and put some stuff on YouTube, you'll see it. He breaks down just the very first section of World 1-1 Super Mario Brothers and says, Miyamoto basically teaches you how to play that game in a trial-by-fire manner that makes it easy. You can't miss that mushroom. Basically, you hit it, it comes back and hits the pipe to get you. You have to jump over the Goomba to know that you can jump over enemies to get the power-up, or you hit the Goomba and you learn that you die.
So, yeah, you're playing through the tutorial without actually knowing you're playing through the tutorial.
Exactly. And other people that we interviewed for the film, like John Pompo, he said that game is still teaching him new things by the different ways that you can play it. He's still learning new secrets from it. And this is a guy who's got probably 24 records, with a lot of the titles coming from the NES. One of the most impressive things I saw in that, a guy finished Super Mario Brothers with 500 points. He basically did all the warps and stuff like that, but the flags he got up to basically got the bare minimum time left. He hit it right at 0 and got 100 points, and then that was it. That moved on. So that I thought took some skill on that level, just to be able to know that game well enough and not accidentally hit any kind of Goombas or turtles or get any coins and still make it through without dying.
I believe the turtles are referred to as Koopas, Rob.
Oh, I apologize.
I believe that's the correct
nomenclature. Yeah, jeez. Goodness.
Jeez. You know what? I'm fired.
Someone
else want to take over the directing reins?
What else is crazy about that game is that, when you're young and playing it, even to this day, you don't question it. It's like Mario's a plumber. He's going down pipes. He's stepping on turtles. He's beating turtles who are throwing hammers at him. There's fire. There's dragons.
Yes. Jay, that's the other big thing. Do you remember, and it's in a cut of the film right now, I think, where James, the same guy, says to us, Mario is a crazy thing. If you tried to pitch that today in any studio, that would never get greenlit. You've got a plumber who eats mushrooms in this fantasy land who has to step on turtles, And I know you created a lot of content for what we're about to talk about today, but Jay, you've hit on one big thing I'd love to throw at you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to finish my point and just saying that the game is so good and sucks you in so well that all these weird elements don't even matter. You're not even thinking twice because you're enjoying the experience so much. Go.
Well, that's a brilliant segue. The thing I was going to throw at you is the industry the way it is today. Which do you think out of the entire NES library? Let's set Mario aside, since that was the big kind of topic we just threw out there. Which games do you think out of the NES library would be the least likely to maybe get greenlit today? So if you go in either as a guy who just has an idea, or you're a developer and you're approaching a publisher, I've got 3 down here that came to me. There's some arguments for either of them, but which do you think would not get licensed today? They could have been classics back in the day.
Okay,
or maybe just their concept wasn't good. All right, go ahead.
The first one that pops into my head is Taboo. Who would license a tarot card game? Is that how you pronounce it? Tarot card?
Yeah, it's tarot card.
Who would license that game today? It is awful, and there's no game to it. You're just reading tarot cards, and it's like that's it. It's game over. That's just the first one that pops into my head.
I'm pretty sure Fester's Quest wouldn't get made today.
I don't know. You see. Here's the thing, Glenn. That's exactly it. There's a brand there, so I couldn't do any of the Bugs Bunny stuff or Wacky Races or any movie stuff because they at least have an audience that is familiar with the Addams Family. So there is some brand appeal. But I see your Taboo, Jay, and I raise you Color a Dinosaur.
Oh, well, that's just not fair.
I don't think anybody would publish a coloring game.
That game.
Why is that not fair?
That game is so wicked. Have you even played it? I am notorious for doing speedruns on Twitch on Color a Dinosaur. I'm telling you,
this is
awesome.
true. This is true.
I'm trying. You know what, Rob? I'm trying to think. You caught me off guard here. I'm trying to think of.
It's a tough one.
A crazy, wacky,
I think honestly, and I wouldn't go so far as to say that some of these games wouldn't actually get made or wouldn't get greenlit or whatever you want to say, but there's so many classic NES titles, and it's not just limited to the NES, but the mechanics in those games and some of the ways they approach the actual game design and the experience that the player has with the game, that stuff would never pass muster today. Games are built to hold people's hands because that's the audience that they're trying to sell those games to now. And I mean, you could not make a Castlevania in the traditional sense and just drop that in somebody's lap today and expect that it would get through without having, some sort of tutorial tacked onto it or some sort of gradual increase in the difficulty or what have you.
Fair enough, but I think you could pitch a Vampire Hunter game and it would get greenlit, or a Mega Man game, and it would get greenlit.
I don't mean that from a thematic perspective at all. I'm just saying, the sheer game mechanics alone would.
Sure. Here's the other side of it, though. There are a lot of strange games, we talked a little bit about stadium events before in athletic world. Fitness games do have a niche market. I think any of the sports games on the NES have a market. There's so you can look at it as in what wouldn't get greenlit, but you could also look at all the things that got their first attempt on the NES that are still being asked to get made today for one reason or another. One of the other games that came up to my mind, and this is one that's definitely arguable, is Anticipation.
Was Anticipation not a TV show though? I can't remember. That's why I'm asking.
I can't remember either. I mean, the box cover would say, but I think you could argue it because you got stuff like Mario Party, which is a video game board game kind of mix. But just the concept of it. I guess the last game I had was Donkey Kong Jr. Math, We don't see a lot of educational stuff nowadays in the gaming industry. You could argue it again because it is a Donkey Kong kind of franchise thing, but
Well,
we don't
that
see
was
a lot of
again
new app stuff.
that was Nintendo trying to sell the NES for something
Sure.
that it wasn't. They wanted to sell it as a toy. They wanted to sell it
Yeah.
as some kind of educational tool. So that's why that game exists. But
Sure.
yeah, honestly,
So-
I can't think of any other. To be honest with you, Rob, you got me there.
So that just came up to me because I knew we were going to talk at some point about Super Mario Brothers, and as soon as I thought about that, James Portnow's quote about how that would never get greenlit today, and yet it's like the most iconic video game of all time, arguably, of course.
yeah,
but
yeah.
without that, we wouldn't have necessarily anything that we have today. Yet today's mentality, that isn't good enough. So I mean, I guess it says a lot about the industry now that we're afraid to take risks and all that kind of stuff. You got to play the safe bet. And I think we talked about that on an episode or something like that. But I don't want to digress into some of the stuff I got. Jay, what else do you have for us?
Let's see. I wanted to talk a bit about the old school 8-bit music from some of the NES
Cool.
games. And again, I don't want to exclude Mario and Zelda, but at the same time I do, because those are the obvious picks. So let's take
Sure.
any of the Marios and the Zeldas out of the equation, if that's cool with you guys.
No argument here.
Yeah, those songs are, let's just say it, they're epic. They're iconic. Everyone knows every song from every Zelda and every Mario game. It's almost like you can't even talk about it because they're so good, right?
Sure.
So I'm just throwing out a few of my favorites. Maybe you guys could take a few minutes to think about some NES music that stands out. The intro title to Mega Man 2.
The entire game.
Yeah.
The music in Mega Man 2
Yeah.
is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, Mega
Music in any Mega Man. I mean,
they're
that whole
good.
franchise.
That beginning, the music goes so well with the camera scrolling up the side of the building, and then you see Mega Man just standing there with the wind blowing in his hair, and that soundtrack just pops on and is so good. It sounds like a superhero song.
I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of the Metal Man stage music.
Yeah,
It's
man.
possibly one of my favorite
Yeah.
game compositions
It's-
ever. Just really, really awesome use of the technology and the composition tools at hand to make a theme that sounded really, really mechanical and almost kind of like proto-electronic music. And
Yeah.
it just
I
fit the
wanna
theme
see
of
a
that really well.
I want to see Astoria, since you guys are bandmates in Astoria,
Yeah.
cover a Mega Man track. You guys should cover a Mega Man track.
Oh, that could be done. I know Joe, our lead singer and guitarist, is probably the biggest Konami fan out there, so he'd be on board with which was my next pick, which would be any music from Castlevania 3 specifically. Again, another incredibly creepy, such a memorable soundtrack. You guys
Yeah.
dig Castlevania? Or?
I love Castlevania music too. I would probably lean more towards. I think for me, the more iconic themes are from the first game, and particularly from Castlevania 2 as well. I really enjoy Bloody
The Night Day themes.
Bloody
yeah.
Tears from Castlevania 2. Again, one of my favorite video game compositions, and that's the for anybody who's not a super huge Castlevania fan, that's the music that plays when it turns into nightfall and you're out in the wild in Simon's Quest, which is a really, really well-known and kind of revisited piece of music over the course of the Castlevania series as well.
Rob,
I'd
what
definitely say
are some of your
Castlevania 2 for me.
some of your favorites? Castlevania. What else you got there?
Turtles. There's a lot of good tracks off the first Turtles game, whether it's just the overworld stuff or whether it's the dam level or whether it's like the mini like in stage stuff from the overworld. There's just a lot of fun stuff like chicken down 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 chicka down 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 like
Yeah.
that stuff is great.
A lot of
And
I can sense a theme here. A lot of the Konami and the Capcom stuff is all high quality.
and I'm going to throw another one out there. It's maybe a little repetitive, but what from the NES library isn't built to have like a repeating hook? And I'm going to say Tetris. Tetris is like hugely addictive. The tracks in that game really affect gameplay, I find, because as you're getting up
Yeah.
in levels,
And then it
the-
speeds
the
up
music gets
when you start to
intense.
die. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's awesome.
Exactly. So I think music plays a huge role in that game.
I'm going to be repetitive too and also call out Metroid because I really, really love the music in Metroid as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
So many of those themes, and again, they get revisited in later Metroid games, and there's so many great variations on them too. But Metroid was, to me, the first game I remember playing where, you were still that single character and you were still playing alone, and that really in and of itself was not a unique concept. But Metroid, to me, was the first game that really emphasized it. It used it as an actual play mechanic to kind of help sell the isolation and the feeling of loneliness while you're playing the game. And the music did such a beautiful job of complementing that.
Yeah,
I got a big one here.
It's really creepy,
I got
yeah, for sure.
Big one here, guys. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Yes,
Does
sir.
that not have just an amazing, iconic soundtrack?
The middle stages when Little Mac's jogging. It's
Yeah,
it's
the
awesome.
training stuff,
yeah, and you
man.
see New York in the back. It's awesome, man. It's just
Yeah.
great.
Of course, Battletoads. You know,
That's got some great bass, and a shout out to Rare. A company I miss dearly. By the way, I miss Rare so much.
yeah. Sunsoft did a lot of stuff too. I mean, I like the Batman soundtrack. I mean, talk about difficulty games, but the soundtrack for Batman just
Such a
really
great
intensified the difficulty. Yeah, it's just good all around. So, lots of good stuff there. I find that a lot of the NES titles, as you got through the NES years, it almost went to a more, not orchestral, but more of a symphony style, composition, that it wasn't just about like the hook in the Mario type, 8 bars on repeat. It was that this stage was going to have this track. Like Mega Man's a perfect example where every villain had their own kind of theme and every stage had their own thing. It wasn't just the same over and over, or was more than 5 or 6 tracks. And I think that's an interesting evolution, because if you look at games today, now we've built in the emotional stuff that goes with the different, level selects.
Yeah, I find, and again, on that same kind of concept, Rob, coming back to Metroid, that Metroid main theme is so much that kind of traditional fanfare and that really kind of upbeat adventure music, and then it's just like as you start getting deeper into the planet, that's when you start hearing these arrangements becoming more sparse and more haunting and creepier. And it really, like I said, as you become more isolated in the game, it's almost like the music is helping to sell you on that, and that's pretty advanced when you consider the limitations of the technology at that point, to see that coming across that way in a game.
Let me ask you guys
Sure.
something. I want to know, do you think that the old school NES tunes maybe stick in our mind more because they're shorter and they constantly loop, compared to, let's just say, compared to Halo that has a huge orchestra and different songs for every part? Do you think it's the repetition and the looping, or do you think, it's just better tunes?
Go ahead, Glenn.
Well, I think that's fair, and I think it's also because so many of us are so young when we initially played those games that it's like it's like those classic cartoon themes or TV show themes from your childhood, right? Like you're going to meet somebody to this day in our age group who's going to be able to basically rhyme off the Transformers theme or G.I. Joe or any of those kind of old school classic cartoons, and it's just because it's so ingrained in them from their youth.
But
And
do you
I think it's
think
the same thing for the games?
a
as well.
kid of our age today now hears the Halo theme, and 20 years from now, the Halo theme will mean as much to him as these older chip tunes mean to us? Just throwing out Halo as an example, like a modern game.
I don't think that's unfair.
I don't think it'll be the same, though, because I think games nowadays generally have more music, so I think there's going to be less to identify. Like, I'm guessing, will know every Mario theme and every Mario piece of music, where I think maybe, and again, broad generalization, that the music nowadays, if we're going to stick with Halo, is less specific because there is more of it, so it's harder to know the 35 tracks that come on the soundtrack. I'm not saying it's not possible for someone who plays the game forever. There's a lot
The
of
songs
huge
are
Halo
longer.
fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's just a different style of writing, and like you're saying, Glenn, it's a little bit more of a theme, a commercial hook that it's supposed to get stuck in your head, but at the same time, it's not supposed to be tired and drawn out. So I think that here's the bigger thing. I think if kids today heard the Mario themes, it would get stuck in their head just as easily now for them as it did for us back then.
I take something like Delfino Plaza theme from Super Mario Sunshine, which I was just playing, a couple weeks ago, and that's just as hooky to me as like the original Mario Brother theme.
First thing that popped in my head for modern themes is the the Metal Gear Solid 2 main theme,
Yeah,
which has kind of made an appearance in every Metal Gear game since because it's so
That's true.
it's so memorable.
absolutely.
So
think
they're
of,
still out there.
I think of stuff like Perfect Dark, you know, some of the stuff on that, and some of the stuff in GoldenEye. I mean, some of that's based on Bond themes, but you know, Perfect Dark, you know, the title screen and stuff on that, stuff in like WrestleMania 2000. You know, these are games that we played a lot. It's not like definitely the iconic of the iconic, but they're still short, hooky, repetitive tracks.
So I just want to switch it up a bit here and talk about some of our most difficult NES games. Not necessarily from our childhood, just altogether, ones that we had trouble with or ones that we still have trouble with. Are there some NES games that we still have yet to finish that we want to? Rob, you want to start this one?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who will probably concur with me in the way I'm about to say this. And it's maybe a little unfair because it's a little bit more arcade driven, and it's a title I've already mentioned, and it's Tetris. It's a little bit of a point kind of thing. There's only 30 levels in the NES version of Tetris, so it's not like a story that you've got to finish, but it's possible because people have got to, you know, the end. One person that we know of, Thor Ackland, has got to level 30, and it goes from 29, and the level resets to 0-0. But there's something so fair about the difficulty of Tetris that it's punishing enough but encouraging at the same time, that you know where you made your mistakes. And knowing that and being able to identify it right away, be able to backtrack, you know, 2 or 3 mistakes before, you know you can play again. And it just really compels you to want to kind of keep playing that. So I would definitely put Tetris up there as one of the most difficult NES games to master of all time.
Tetris is a really good example, and I totally agree with you. It's such a random game, and it's completely different every time you play it. So the only way to master it is just to really, I don't even know how you master it. I want to say hi to Thor. Hi, Thor. Go ahead, Glenn.
Ninja freaking Gaiden.
Ah, yes. You say Gaiden, I say Gaiden.
I say Gaiden because
But we
I
still
believe in pronouncing things correctly.
live in harmony.
It's the wizard. It's the wizard.
Ninja
It's
Gaiden.
the wizard.
Hi.
Hey. Exactly.
That game is infamously difficult.
The first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of them are, honestly, but the first one is the one.
1 and 3 are definitely the hardest.
But if there is not a gamer listening to us right now who does not have that experience of jumping over a gap, having a random eagle appear in midair, and knock them back to a pit to their death at a crucial moment in the gameplay, I applaud you for being able to somehow not have that life experience. But
I'm of the opinion that any bird in any NES game is bad news.
And
Bad
of course,
news.
the second you say that, I think of Ghosts and Goblins. Demon.
oh
Oops.
god,
We're gonna have to bleep that
Yeah,
out.
bleep that out, please. Boy, he gets you really mad. that demon, yeah, he got his own game. That sucker. He got 2 games
that's a
actually.
brutally hard game too.
3 games. He got a Game Boy game, an NES game, and a
Brutally
Super
hard.
Nintendo game. But anyway,
Castlevania too, for that matter. Those Medusa heads.
You know
Again,
what
yeah,
though?
the
I mean,
birds, yeah.
Any clock tower level in a Castlevania game is just made to earn tears from you.
again, Batman is a really hard game, and we've talked about this series already. Mega Man, for some reason, I was really good at Mega Man 2 when I was a kid. Not so much nowadays. I don't know what the deal is.
oh, dude,
but
it's
those-
like Glenn said a few minutes ago, man. Sorry to cut you off there, but this is a really good point he made. Where games nowadays, they really do hold your hand. Case in point, I'm not going to get on a big rant about Dark Souls. However, I am in love with that game. And the reason is, it's not because it's difficult. It's because when you die, you're dead. You have to do it again, like it used to be, right?
I just need to mention that my biggest game claim to fame was that at one point in my life when I was very, very young, I was able to finish Mega Man 2 without losing a life. I was able to actually play through the entire game without dying once.
Aww.
That was my big bragging thing, and just the notion of being able to do that now is mind-blowing to me. Just that I was ever that good.
It's all the MMOs, man.
That's how much I played it.
That's what it
We
is.
We rented that game enough that we could have bought it like 20 times over. It's insane, and I still bought it after the fact and just played the ever-loving crap out of it.
Yeah.
Such a great game.
There's a good question to throw at you guys. What game were you guys the best at?
Oh, that's easy.
on in the NES.
That's easy.
In the back of the day.
Contra.
That,
Contra.
Contra?
Oh, yeah. We had Nintendo headquarters just up the street from where I live now, where you could go and rent NES games. My mom took me every Saturday, and every single Saturday, as long as it was there, I got Contra. Oh, my God, I love that game.
How did you not own Contra?
Just back in the day, I guess my mom looked at it like, you're spending $5.95 every week instead of, what was Contra, 80 Canadian, 90 Canadian back then. So I guess she just looked at it like, we're going out to rent you a game anyway. So yeah, I did eventually get it, but
yeah, there's a whole bunch of things coming up to me now. Like you couldn't, and again, this appears in the film too. Before Nintendo, you couldn't rent video games. You know what I mean?
No, 2600 Coleco stuff. No way. At least not where we were, Rob. Where we were situated in London here, there was nothing like that. Not at all.
But renting Nintendo games became quite a staple. It was so popular that, these video stores could take a chance in buying the stock because there were so many kids out there that wanted to constantly play Nintendo games.
Yeah.
And side shout out, the best game I was at growing up was probably Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle. We don't have to get into that.
Oh, not this game again. For the love of God, man. Let it go.
I would have assumed
it's
DuckTales.
a good game.
Yeah, we
assumed DuckTales.
Glenn and I thought DuckTales. No?
It's I enjoy it. I mean, it's hard to say that you're really good at it. I mean,
didn't you just didn't you admit in another episode that you own like 38 copies of it or something?
Yeah, I enjoy the game. Clearly, I enjoy it. But again, like, what do you base like how well like you are at the game that you don't die, that you can beat it in 20 minutes? Like Tetris, we've determined that to be good at it, you got to deal with the randomness and the speed and all these other factors. Crazy Castle, there's a lot of randomness to it. And it's one of those games where it doesn't allow you to jump, and you've got to time, and you've got to really know the map. And you got to just get the items in a certain order. And if you mess up by like 1 second here and there, you're messed up. There's 100 levels. It'll take you forever to do it.
What was yours, Glenn?
Oh, absolutely.
Mega Man 2?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mega Man 2. That's right.
The game I finished the most other than that was probably Simon's Quest. I played through that game a lot. I wouldn't say I was necessarily good at it, but
now,
I finished it a bunch.
Did you have the power, Nintendo power, to help you through that?
But of course.
Yeah. How could you get through that wall? How did you know how to kneel? And what was it? Kneel and put the crystal down or something? And that tornado came and
you kneeled at the edge of the lake with the crystal. Yeah.
Well, of course you did. But unless you had the power, you were in trouble. There's no way you would have known that.
I never had Nintendo Power growing up. Jay, I remember you used to get you subscribed to it, and I was always so jealous. I got every now and then. I was treated to GamePro and their smiley face, thumbs up, rating reviews.
You know what?
But
I love GamePro, man. I do. I did. Then I discovered Electronic Gaming Monthly, and that was the end of GamePro. But
I was an EGM guy.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
EGM was awesome.
So but I got to tell you, the one time I did get my hands on a Nintendo Power was the Final Fantasy edition. Now that was awesome because that was like a full-on dedicated like double issue to everything in that game.
Well, it was one of the first published strat guides to my knowledge, and that was published by Nintendo Power. And Nintendo Power is great because unlike other mags at the time, it was so colorful and they were always really thick. There was a lot of ads, but it was minimal compared to like EGM or GamePro. I remember there was a lot of maps too.
Those covers were great.
Okay, there's two things I really remember about Nintendo Power when I think about it. One of them was the cover, which was I think it was the Castlevania 2 cover where you had the guy who was purportedly Simon on the cover holding Dracula's head, and it was fairly graphic as video game covers would have gone at that point. Yeah. And then the other thing I remember is I remember back when Dragon Warrior was being released in North America, the original Dragon Warrior. They did this huge special on Dragon Warrior, and the whole thing was basically selling North American kids on the concept of what an RPG was, because at that point, they didn't exist.
Dragon Warrior wasn't doing too well here also, so remember if you subscribed, they sent you a free copy of Dragon Warrior?
Remember that actually, yeah. But I remember the huge sales job in that magazine, just kind of explaining the whole concept of what the game was supposed to be about.
Okay, I got only a couple more questions, Rob. I don't know if you have anything else, but now I want to talk sequels on the NES specifically. I want to talk about sequels that were never made that we wish were made. Okay?
Okay.
Now, mine is going to be Mario 4. There was never a Mario 4. Now, no, I'm not talking about Super Mario World because that was the Super Nintendo's. I'm talking about games that could have been made but never got made. So my dream game, of course, after Mario 3 would have been Mario 4. I think I probably would have had a heart attack if that game came out. If the Super Nintendo didn't come out and they kept going, man, that would be my pick. Rob, you got one?
Well, other than the obvious of Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle 2 or Birthday Blowout 2.
Oh, for the love of...
I mean, I'm a huge Wizards and Warriors fan, and there's 3 of those. There's 4 Turtles games. There's enough Mega Mans. I don't know how much they could have changed, like a sequel for Punch-Out.
Well, they could have made new characters. And what about Taboo 2? Did you ever think about that?
Taboo 2, yes.
Oh, that would have been
course.
awesome. You could have used the...
Of course,
you could use the power pad to flip the cards over, or the power glove.
We got Tetris 2, and that was a letdown. I don't know, man. I mean, dare I say that I'm just pretty satisfied with everything? I mean, obviously, other than a Mario game, maybe another Zelda game or a Final Fantasy 2, since it never came out on the NES.
I think the problem that question poses in my mind is I wouldn't want a sequel to a game on that system that would have been at the expense of a sequel we actually did get later on another one. You know,
like Super Metroid.
Or Link to the Past or anything like that. I would say, if anything, just that it would have been nice to have gotten the proper Metal Gear sequel over here on the NES in the first place.
Yeah, Snake's Revenge. Oh, boy. Anyone who's ever played Snake's Revenge, it was not done by Kojima, and boy, can you tell. Oof, it stinks.
Can we maybe get a shout-out to replace Contra Force with something else?
Well, again, I see Glenn's point now when he says if we had a third Contra, we wouldn't have had Contra 3 The Alien Wars on Super Nintendo. So I kind of get where he's going there.
Or Contra Hardcore on Genesis.
Yeah, Contra Force, although very, very rare and very collectible, it's not necessarily a bad game. It's just not a Contra game. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not a Contra game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I only have one more question, and I want a quick, honest answer from both you guys. You can only pick one franchise. Okay, this is on NES only. The Super Mario Brothers franchise or the Legend of Zelda franchise. You can have all the games for the NES and that said series, but you can only pick one. Gentlemen, what do you pick? Long pause.
Well, for me, it's Mario. I mean, first of all, you get 3 games opposed to 2 games, maybe 4 depending on what you want to count. There's just so many different ways to play Mario, as we talked about it. Where I think, as great as the Zelda games are, I don't see the range in options to play through that franchise versus the Mario franchise. It's really hard to compete with 2 titans like Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 3. You know.
Okay. So 1 vote for Mario. Glenn, what do you got?
As much as I love Zelda, and I definitely prefer Zelda, it's got to be Mario, and pretty much for the same reasons that Rob said. It's just like the sheer variety between the three proper, I guess, Mario titles, if you want to call them that, is enough that it's like if you had one choice of game and that was all you were ever going to be able to play, there's a lot more variety to be had there.
Well, the replayability of the Mario games. Again, you can go score attack, you can do speed runs, you can try and get to the end the quickest. So my vote is Super Mario. So that's 3 Marios. And again, oh man, I can't tell you how much I love Zelda. And Zelda 1 and 2 are so different from another, which I think is really great. I think I'm one of the few Zelda 2 fans out there. But I gotta go Mario for sure.
Here's a question for you guys, and this is probably like a quick answer. What's the last NES game that you guys purchased? And how did you feel about that purchase?
You mean back when you could purchase them brand new?
Yeah, so like you were still buying games. It's obviously in the Super Nintendo and Genesis era. What's the last NES game that you bought
that's easy.
while it was still on shelves? Go ahead.
Quick backstory. I was working at Microplay in Canada here, which was a fantastic video game chain. And I went with the assistant manager to the States. His name was Andrew at the time, and this was 93, 94. So this was well into the end of the NES. And I picked up Mega Man 6 from Toys R Us. Awesome, awesome game.
Honest answer is I cannot remember. I
Dishonest answer then.
No, I don't. I honestly don't remember.
Make something up.
I remember selling my NES my NES library to somebody who's very, very happy to have them for the sake of getting a Super NES before they were even available in Canada. My dad drove transport trucks for a lot of his life, and he stumbled across them in the States, and they hadn't shipped to Canada yet. And I was basically, the first kid anywhere near me to actually have one. So that was a fun little bragging right to have too. But that I remember, but I don't remember what the last title I bought for the original NES was.
Sweet. Rob.
The last title I got was from a store that was a little bit of a strange store. I don't think it was ever in America. It was a place called Consumers Distributing.
I remember Consumers Distributing.
Oh, yes.
You remember you used to get the magazines for this thing? I got like all my NHL games from these guys too for the Genesis. But the last NES game I got for it was a game I bought with my own money. It's a game called Clash at Demon Head.
I remember Clash at Demon Head too.
It's a good game.
It's a good game. It's wacky. There's a bit of and I say wacky in that you can have all these different power-ups that you can apply to your character, and it's kind of like a choose your own adventure stage select, so you can avoid different ones. It's a little bit like Bionic Commando in some ways too. It's by Vic Takai, and actually there's a Scott Pilgrim reference to Clash at Demon Head too, I think. So
for all our listeners out there who aren't Canadian, I don't know if you guys had Consumers Distributing, but I just want to talk about it a little bit because it's been a while. You would go into this store, and there would be nothing but tables and laminated catalogs. You would flip through the catalog and find said item. For me, most of the time, it was Star Wars figures.
And then there were all these like forms and pencils.
Yes, exactly. And the catalogs would always come out a good long time before any of this merchandise was there. So I would go and try and get the new Star Wars figures. And of course, my mom would go to the counter and hand them the slip. 5 minutes later, they come in, oh, we don't have that, or we're sold out. Man, you remember that? Consumers it bummed me out so much.
What you did is you filled out the form, you put down the item numbers of the stuff from the catalog you wanted.
Yeah.
You went up to the desk, you gave it to one of the sales reps or whatever, I guess. And they go back into this warehouse in the back and would try and see if they had it. And Jay's right, like you have, it seemed like for me, it was always like a 50-50 shot as to whether or not they actually had something in stock when I tried to get it there.
I want Luke in Jedi, black outfit, every time. Nope. Never did get it from Consumers. I think I got it from Toys R Us, but I didn't, just before, sorry, I didn't ask the most obvious question. Does everybody here have a favorite NES game or a couple favorite NES games?
Yeah, I mean, I've got three, and this is something we kind of talked about.
We could do three
during the day leading up to this. I think you asked us if we could only pick three forever, whether this is the desert island scenario or not. I mean,
let's say
games
it is.
that have been mentioned. Okay, so if I could only have three games forever that are from the NES library only, it would be Final Fantasy, Super Mario Brothers, and Tetris. For the simple reason that Mario is, you can play it through any way you want, and you can spend a lot of time playing it if you want, but not a ton of time. Final Fantasy you can play for hours and days. So you got your long form play and your medium play. And Tetris, of course, it's your short play. You can pick it up and put it down. So you got kind of three different choices there for the kind of entertainment you want, and they're all challenging in different ways.
That's good, Glenn.
The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and Super Mario Brothers 3.
Oh man, you guys are gonna be so disappointed with mine. Those are really good picks. Mine is Nintendo World Championships Gold, Nintendo World Championships Great. No, I'm just kidding. I would say the original Super Mario Brothers, a top-down shooter named Gun Knack, which is a spiritual successor to Blazing Lasers on the Turbo, which is an absolutely mind-blowing game. And my third would be Donkey Kong, one of my favorite games of all time. So there you go.
Sure. I've got one thing maybe to throw at you guys, all right?
Yeah, man.
Now this works out that it comes at the end because we've talked about a lot of different genres, a lot of different aspects to the NES library. Now, Jay, this is something that you and I usually do when we hang out, and it usually involves bands where we try to, mishmash the best super group together with members from a whole bunch of other bands. So I'm going to throw it at you guys. Let's mix and match the best elements from several NES games into the best single one. So there's four things to take into account, okay? So you got to pick the base game or franchise or character. You got to pick the genre so you can mix and match something that's different. And you got to pick, the kind of stage, that you want for it and the music that you want. So just so it's clear, here's how I would do it, all right? So the base game or franchise or character would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for me. And I'd love to see it done in an RPG style where there are dungeons or special levels done like a Ninja Gaiden level. And I'd love to have the music from Mega Man.
Wow, you really overplotted this thing, didn't you?
I've put a lot of thought into this. This is the stuff that you and I do all the time, though. So, think about it.
Oh, except you've had all afternoon to write it out.
I think my problem is that the games I would pick have already been made into that game, and that game is called Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Okay.
Which has Metroid mashed with Castlevania, mashed with also Castlevania. Amazing music.
Okay, well, that's the cheap cop-out answer, but
It's true, though.
okay. I would want a three-quarter top-down view like the original Legend of Zelda. I would want, without a shadow of a doubt, I would want the Super Mario Brothers world.
Sure.
Oh, and why not? Let's do a Final Fantasy turn-based RPG. There you go. That's pretty cool, man. Let's do that.
That's cool. So it's basically it's Mario RPG in other
I was
words.
going to say, wasn't that game also made?
Easy. Gentlemen.
I got no more tricks.
Oh, I feel silly. I guess that's it for another episode.
I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for all the positive response that we've had on the podcast so far. We've had a lot of fun putting it together, and we hope people are enjoying it. And all we'd ask is if you hear a question that you've got a great answer to on the show, feel free to share it with us in the comments. If you have any feedback at all, please leave us a comment and let us know. We definitely want to do what we can to make it better, but we're having a great time doing this for you guys, and we hope you're enjoying listening to it too.
Yeah, and
speaking of which, I did get a question. I should probably throw this out there so you can answer now. This seems like a logical place. One of the questions I got was, with a film like Wreck-It Ralph that blends both like kind of 8-bit aesthetics and like, current CG looking 3D rendered stuff, what kind of impact does that have on one another, and what does it say about the future and past of gaming?
Wow. I think first of all, I'm a huge fan of that movie. I love it. I think it's awesome. I love how it combines the new school CG with the old school 8-bit stuff. When they go into what's Ralph's game called again? Fix It Felix? Is that what it's called? I love when they go in there and they're having a party and Ralph's never invited, but it's all kind of 8-bit and you see them kind of glitch out here and there. And then it pulls back, and as they're traveling in between the different arcade cabinets, it's all in a new 3D kind of, shiny look. I love it.
I think there's something charming, and I think it's more than just catering to nostalgia for everybody that remembers that. I think nostalgia definitely plays a huge part in it.
Well, every character is in that, so it's great. They do a shout out to literally every old school character, man. It's awesome.
Except for Mario, but we won't get into that. So basically, though, I think that it's honoring that there is something charming about design that was 30, 40 years ago, and it has a place alongside stuff that is designed today with more technical, with less technical limitations, I guess I should say. Glenn, what do you think?
I think you see that. I think you see that happening in games already, honestly, and I think that's really reflective of that. So I think when you look at a franchise like Nintendo's got going with Super Smash Brothers, where you do have a game that is rendered in 3D but still plays out on a 2D plane rather, and is very, very action driven, and it's a fighting game. You see these kind of retro remakes. The new Strider that just came out actually is a really good example of that, where you've got a new looking game based on a very kind of classic
new Strider's
platform. And then
yeah.
on top of that, you see all the indie games now that borrow that old kind of classic aesthetic, but then they marry that with newer design elements and newer ideas in terms of storytelling and design too. So you're really seeing people kind of using that stuff from the past to kind of bring that kind of neat sheen or neat kind of angle to something, but then really putting a new spin on it too, which is quite cool.
It's nice to see the past and the present come together and embrace one another. I think it's really cool. But we are out of time. So again, guys, please, any feedback. We are one community, the NES Club here. We really do believe that we should all band together, stick together. So hey, if you guys have any questions, you want us to talk about any kind of topics, just let us know. For the NES Club, I am Jay. We got Rob.
I am Rob.
And I am Glenn. Thanks for joining the club, guys. We'll see you next time.